Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director at Epic Made, and we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Amanda Russell of Cream, Gage Mitchell of Modern Species, and Raphael Pollendagle of Split Bass.
We are forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we're always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is always brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of artists and strategists with a mastery of visual storytelling. Our studio makes unforgettable animation and graphic illustration infused with ideas that put money in your pocket. We best serve marketers and brands seeking to engage nerdy millennials, and some of our favorite clients include Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
I'm going there right now.
Hell yeah. So with us today, we have Jacques Spitzer. He is the CEO of Raindrop. So Jacques' 4-time Emmy Award-winning 8-figure agency has made a name for itself, growing brands with marketing people love. After multiple Super Bowl campaigns and over $1 billion in sales, he was recently named one of California's most visionary CEOs by the Los Angeles Times, who added, "Raindrop's creative success and results have put San Diego on the map for creative work across the country." Welcome, man. Pleasure to have you.
It is an honor to be here.
Hell yeah.
And I mean, I'm all hyped up after that intro. I'm not gonna lie. I was listening to, the entire thing. You guys run a tight ship. So let's give people something to talk about. Let's see how explicit this episode could get. I want an E next to it.
You got to earn those E's, for sure.
That's right.
All right, Jacques. So before we jump into today's topic, I want our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us how long you've been in your industry and what you're most proud of so far.
Oh, man. Well, I have been doing this for 13 years. I feel like that's a very specific number, but that is just accurate.
It's an easy number to count.
It's a prime number. Number. I almost felt like it feels like I should just say over a decade, because it just feels almost like when my son's like, I'm 8.25 years old.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this
22 months old. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I've been doing this for more than a decade. We have just an unbelievable team, and we do, as you said in the intro, we create marketing people love, which is hard to define what that means. But like, we just came out with a campaign last week, so by the time this airs, who knows? But it's for a brand called Laundry Sauce. It's got Scott Eastwood in it, who's an actor, and I was just remarking on the fact that it has, the ad itself doesn't just have a 1% click-through rate. It has a 0.5% comment rate. Like, people are responding to it overwhelmingly positively. And I was like, wow, when you have advertising that has that type of reaction from people, where they don't just like it, but they love it, they go out of their way to comment on it, to share it, what is the compounding interest, the value of that creates for a brand? And that's what we've created for, this last decade. I mean, that's what we're known for. I'm incredibly proud of the growth that the brands have seen, but more importantly, the team that we have, and genuinely enjoy every single team member we have. And we have the kindest team, the best, smartest team, I believe, in the world. I know I'm biased, but
ouch.
That's been my goal, and my business partner's goal is not what kind of brand can we work with or what kind of work can we do. It's more, who can we become as an agency. And so that's where we're at. I mean, it's been a journey, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it here in a bit.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man.
The proof in all that is in the 8-figure agency and the what was it, $1 billion in sales, right? Like
yeah, what's better than $1 million?
It is.
A billion.
It's like a whole 1,000 times better than a million.
Oh my God.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's just the numbers, right? The numbers speak for themselves, and that's pretty amazing. And obviously, you've been able to continue to leverage that success into more and more brands. So it'll be exciting to see what your next decade looks like, friend.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so speaking on that, on this episode of Pixel Retentive, we are going to be discussing how to create meaningful connections with people through ads. Basically, what we both do to some degree.
Yep.
I mean, your studio slogan, marketing people love. For a while, we were using a similar slogan where it was creative, you'll remember, right?
Less in vibrant of a statement.
I don't know.
I like it. You know what? Bring it back.
Bring it back.
Bring it back.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I never forgot it. Because I've always remembered.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you have your client list includes like Lumi. It includes Dr. Squatch, correct? Right?
Yeah.
What are some other ones?
We work with Manscaped.
Yeah.
We have a lot of other. I mean, we're in the power tool space with Works. We work with Sunday. We work with Ridge.
A lot of them have a comedic undertone to them. At least the ones that I openly recognize being from your studio. Is that something that you guys go with relatively consistently? Do you feel like that connects with people immediately, and that's a tool that you guys use?
Here's what I'd say. In general, it is definitely a strong tool that we use. I think there's a reality that, humor connects. I should say humor done right,
Done well,
connects. Right? Humor that makes people feel like you get them and they get you connects. Years ago, I started realizing that even the top spending brands in the world, a lot of them lean into humor for things like Doritos, or things like, I'm actually shocked by the fact that no one else kind of sees this, but the palette of brands that sell like car insurance,
Geico,
home insurance, insurance companies, they're almost all now humor based. They weren't all at one point, but it's like Geico sort of took things in a certain direction, and now it's like Allstate's got their funny ads.
Nationwide as well does.
Farmers market, like, what are you wearing? Khakis. I say all this to say, I think that humor is a tool, and it's a tool that we do really well. But we have other brands that we work with that don't necessarily leverage humor that see a lot of success. I think, though, that in an age where so much of we talked earlier, even just very briefly, about this idea of having sort of an outsized return or leverage with your advertising where people respond to it. Mm-hmm. You either have to really, really nail something like, I think about that Dove campaign where they had the sketch artists, sketching women describing themselves and then having other people describe them and how much more accurate it was versus the other. There's been some really cool, beautiful, creative campaigns out there that get shared. But it is a reality that people want to be educated and they want to be entertained. Right. And they were not, in most cases, they were not looking or asking for your ad. That's a pretty high bar. I'd also say that a lot of times when people have emotional advertising, it's so good the first time, but then by like the fourth time, you're like, not this ad again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Whereas humor, it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's like, play that one back. That's my favorite jam, I mean, there's still commercials that if I got served today, I'd be happy to see them. Just like, I love this commercial. And I think that there's a variety of reasons that I think humor is a really great device for educating and entertaining at the same time, building brand affinity and feelings towards a brand. But there's also other vehicles as well. And we do other vehicles. Right. And I think increasingly over the next 10 years, we'll probably get into even more of those. So it's a very long-winded way of saying, yes, we do a lot of humor. It's not the only thing we do.
Yeah.
And let me reverse the question back to you, because you all do things with and without humor. You do things that are fun to watch, right, and consume. So I'd love to hear from you. Like, what is it? How do you all think about what you do to make ads that people remember when I'm making ads that people love?
Yeah.
You want to answer first, or you want me to take it?
I'll sign it up and you can hit it out.
Right.
How's that? So the idea, so I rebranded this company in 2016 to be Epic Made, because it's in our hearts to do really amazing shit that's just like as high a level as we can execute as often as possible. So I don't think that I think when we lean into that, we lean into that more than the excitement and the anticipation and the just grip you kind of vibe. So
yep.
And then Ross can kind of lean into that more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that so I personally study a lot of storytelling, whether that's screenwriting or creating TV shows and so on and so forth, right? It's not necessarily storytelling in the advertising sense. I have a passion for longer form storytelling, but I think a lot of it translates really well to smaller ads. Or any sort of smaller creative. And I think one of the easiest translations, regardless of what genre you're going into, right, whether it's a comedy or a epic action film or a horror or whatever, is having that personal connection. You want your audience to be able to feel something, right? And that's the humor is an easy way to get there. I think also, like you said, there's the emotional draw is an easy way to get there, like a heartfelt draw, and action, I think, is another easy way to get there. Basically, you just want your audience to be able to feel something. And I think you're right in saying, it's something I hadn't considered before, that the replayability of the ads is something that is extremely valuable. Because you probably don't want to hear the same, like, in the arms of an angel, right? You probably don't want to hear that over and over and over again. You get jaded to it, but you're never going to become jaded to, a Lumi video where they're talking about, your armpits, bacteria farting and whatnot.
You're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I will add too that humor gives you the ability to talk about very sad or dangerous things in a way that isn't like looking directly into the sun. And I think think about Mayhem, that whole character, and that, that idea of like, you're going to get in this car accident and a tree's going to fall on you and blah, blah, blah. And like, how they made it funny, but like, that's not, when that shit happens, it's not funny. See,
terrible.
Listen, baby, put the E in the episode.
Get that red.
So that's why I think a lot of times, humor is like taking people's guard down. Is like dissembling a grenade of their walls and their nose, 100%. But there's other ways to build trust.
Oh yeah, and honestly, Mayhem's a great example of something else that I think we do a lot when we're planning for this kind of stuff, which is creating a proxy for the client's problem, right? Whether that's through several visuals or one character like Mayhem, where you're creating a direct one. You're not just trying to explain something. You're creating a direct one-to-one example or visual symbol of some sort that they can relate to or that they can understand very quickly without having a bunch of backstory or exposition.
Yep.
Yeah, and I like what you were saying there, like creating a different scenario to talk about a thing, because the thing you want to talk about is just awful, right? Like, and I think the first time that really hit me was with Squatty Potty, from the Harmon Brothers, where they literally have a unicorn taking a dump, and it's like somehow it looked delicious and exciting, and they're like talking about your colon and like getting really into and it's like otherwise wretched, but somehow it was funny. And like, again, one of those ads that I will never turn off when it pops back on, because it's very evergreen, just entertaining. I think there's a line of that too within the action side, where if like something's gripping and like, oh my God, I'll watch this fight scene again, or this like funny ad that's like violent and quick and crazy. I mean, violent's not the right word, but it could be violent.
Yeah.
But it is. Yeah. But yeah, that sad play, like that that'll get you once or twice, but after that, like you don't want to feel sad, but you also like can't leave it if you feel engaged by it. But I don't know, these are interesting ways of looking at some of these things.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I mean, check out, go on YouTube and check out Native the Centaur, or the Vampire. Like they're just, it's like if you're gonna get served an ad,
Mhm.
it is better than what you're about to watch.
Mhm.
It is just that entertaining. It's that good, and I'm like that. To me, if people start seeing their advertising through that lens, they will win more often, or at least trying to accomplish that. And so yeah, I mean, I definitely love what I love about our advertising is twofold. One, it creates real tangible results of sales, right? Most people can't say that. Most people say, oh, sentiment, whatever. I'm like, no, like people watch this and they're like, oh my gosh, I gotta try this. I gotta buy it. I gotta, because now it's not because they just thought it was a good ad. It's because they're educated, because they actually learned why this thing is better. And
they're invested, and they understand why they're feeling the problem. And so they know that they're now equipped to solve the problem on their own, and you've given them the outlet to do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Which I've learned over time is essentially just the sales process. You go from I've never heard of you to I know how you fit in my life.
Right.
And that is evergreen, the sales process. And so when you have an ad that can bridge that gap from I've never heard of you, or maybe I've heard of you, but I don't really know what you do, to I know exactly where you fit in my life, you accelerate the sales process. You can, instead of 7 or 10 touches, you do it in 1 to 2. It's really exciting to see when brands are able to create a campaign that's able to accomplish that. And you all do a lot of work with brands that are, you mentioned kind of millennial, you might call it millennial nerdy.
Yep.
And I'm curious what has been sort of some of those campaigns where you knew that you had hit that chord, right? Because you're always trying to hit the chord, just like
of course, yeah.
And it's like sometimes you're like, all right, hit the mark. Yeah. Curious, what was one of those, and how do you know? What was the indicators?
So, I'd probably say, so there's 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, and I think both of them were for a Sci-Fi Network in some way, shape, or form. One of them is Sci-Fi /USA Network, but was the Sci-Fi Pride campaign, and they had like a Pride Month video ad, and then when they released the Chucky series, they had us create a post. So they had a bunch of studios create posters, 1 studio per episode.
Okay.
And so we ended up doing one of those, and both of them were so well received because we're so dialed into, like, we live this stuff. Like, you can look at my backdrop.
The kind of the cultures and subcultures.
The culture,
yeah. You're a couple cultures deep in the Reddit channel.
Yeah. I mean, like my like Carl and I's backdrop speaks for itself, in just the sense that like we watched Chucky when we were younger. We watched Sci-Fi Channel when we were younger, and we understand, like, we are the audience we're advertising to. And I think when it comes to like the millennial nerdy space, there's a lot of draw on nostalgia. There's a lot of draw on humor, but humor with intelligence behind it, right?
It's like
clever.
You get it because you're in the know. You get it, you
right?
It really pulls you. I mean, we've done a little bit. We did some work with Halo and Star Wars with our Dr. Squatch work. And we actually hired people that were like super nerds, right? To make sure that we had those little, like in the Halo moment, there's a whole thing where I don't know how into Halo you are. But I guess.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
I played all of them.
There's a how did we get here or something, like there's like a line from Red vs. Blue or something, and like we have this whole, it's like Easter eggs is I think what people call them, right?
Yep.
And so you guys are like, we literally shit Easter eggs
Oh, without a doubt.
That term is super important. That's a millennial. That's a cornerstone of millennial media, right? Is Easter eggs. Like Red versus Blue, and Portal does, Portal the game does it very often. Like several, let's say middle to the 2000s and 2010s were a generational experiment in hiding nostalgia in new media. Right? It wasn't remakes as much as it was this new thing, but we recognize fandom from somewhere else that we're hiding in here, and you grab attention for the people, the shared audiences, right?
Yeah. When I hire someone on this team, like one of the qualifications is that they have a deep nerddom in something they're really just like, that's one of my questions. Like, what can you nerd out on more than anybody else? Like, because I want to know like what's in the Rolodex of our team. And like every major, there's 11 of us now, like I said. So there's probably, I can't think of anything that's in popular culture that someone on our team just doesn't completely junk out over. So like that's one of our skill sets for sure. And it's core. And, we lean on that heavy when we work in the gaming space and in the entertainment space, because people expect those kind of Easter eggs, and it adds so much value to the audience. Because like you said, they now feel heard and seen like never before. It's not some like old school boomer agency that we're gonna throw this thing and it's got the metrics and it hits all, it's like none of that trash. Like, so I totally resonate with that.
Yeah. And you see it all the time in modern day retellings of other media that we grew up digesting, right? I mean, think of the Disney remakes, right? Just off base. Like, you get all of the fans of the original baked into this thing, and yet they're all failing because the heart of it isn't there. Like, they're not taking what people actually liked about these things and considering how to keep that in there. We see them as cash grabs, right? And when you start to see an advertisement as a cash grab, you disregard it.
Yeah.
Like it's
that's an interesting point. Okay, let me ask you this, because I think that one of the best sequels ever made was Top Gun Maverick. And I say that just because I'm like, man, did they thread the needle of a brand new storyline with so many Easter eggs that pulled on the right. It's a different feeling. It had a completely different feeling than when you watch Aladdin or The Lion King remade, where it's like all the
magic was gone.
All the magic, the magic. Yeah. Now, the thing I don't know yet too is a lot of those my son hasn't watched, so I'll be curious to see what his heart gravitates to in the future. But yeah, I mean, you experience something as a child, and it forever holds that little piece of magic in your heart. And then it was interesting that they decided to kind of almost target more of the adult audience with those, rather than like update. I mean, it could have just updated aspects of the film with higher tech. I don't know if the magic would have felt. It would always. I think it's almost an unfair thing. It's like anything that pulls on nostalgia outside of Easter eggs, if it's too direct, it just feels like a lesser version of the original.
Well, that's the reason Maverick, right, is because it. And there are several remakes, like the Halloween movies, for example. The new Halloween movies do a very similar thing that Top Gun Maverick did, where they understand the audience who is going to watched the original and probably loved it, right? But they're not riding the entire production on that feeling. They're telling a new story with the backbone of what worked on the other one, not the entire thing running the show. And most remakes, not only do they strip the backbone from the original and then have that run the whole project, but they completely disregard some of the nuances that people loved in the originals and just try to replace those things with what they think people want now, because there's this stigma of, oh, we don't want to retell the same story. But I think most people they like comfort in that way. They like nostalgia. They want to see these things honored. And I think that's a big part of it, right? I don't think it's because we grew up with them. I think it's because when these were originally created, which happened to be when we were younger, storytelling was more revered and more honored by the people who were making them at the time.
I think some of these big spaces too. Sorry, Ross, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
okay, no, I think there's such a risk aversion now in these huge studios, like Disney stuff, that they don't want to take a risk on a new story that no one's ever heard of. Hey, let's go present this to the board, and whoever's going to sign our checks, hey, we're just going to take this old idea, re-glass it over a little bit, cut out anything that might be offensive, because we want to make sure no one gets offended by anything, and then we're going to take this to market, and it's going to be good because people will show up, and then it just flops because they stripped all of it out. Because it was never, there was the magic in it was all the things from before, and instead of building on top of that, let's repurpose it and make some cash, and that's what it feels like every time.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you this: we're kind of at a juncture in this conversation, because I could spend the next 30 minutes talking about all of my theories on nostalgia and movies. And I will say, I mean, you're absolutely right. And what's awful about all of this is, and I don't know the sales numbers for Elemental, for example. I think it's Elemental.
I think it's Elemental.
Yeah, it's I saw that movie. It wasn't very good, and it was a brand new idea, brand new concept. And so I think what's hard is, as an investment, you're seeing these mega successes coming from non-new storylines. And so I get why it's happening. I think we all, to some extent, it's even if we don't say we like it, we're still consuming it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right?
Totally, right?
That's why it's going to take a massive shift for it to actually change. And actually, before we shift off of this, I do want to say one other thing. First off, Disney's lost over $100 million per project for the last 6 projects. Right. It's nuts. They're almost $500 million in the can since I think they made Luca, which was kind of the string of.
I would love to understand what those last 6 are. When you make that, I mean, I don't know, make you pull it up on the spot, but it's hard for me to imagine that they have 6 losses in a row.
It's because
on the animation side, because not like Marvel and stuff too.
I honestly, I don't know. I know it's on the animation side at least, but I don't know.
Making up statistics on this.
I think I can pull this shit up. Don't make me turn this car around. No, I will say though, no one talks about Marvel anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Most people aren't excited to go see the movies. It's on its last leg in some respects. It's still going to make more money than the average, indie film or even established studio trying to make something completely new. But I can say 2 of the highest grossing movies to date in the animated space have been Into the Spider-Verse and the Puss in Boots movie, of all things, which was Shrek was more or less a dead franchise prior to that, both of which put and the Mario movie.
Mario movie was great.
Right? All 3 of those were studios notoriously worse than Disney, right? You have Sony, who had a bad reputation for butchering the Spider-Man movies. It was DreamWorks, who just hadn't had a win in a really long time, since probably the first Shrek. And I don't remember the Mario movie, but I can't remember the last movie that they did, which kind of says itself. But all 3 of them won.
Universal.
Yeah. All 3 of them, well, there was a specific studio who produced it that wasn't, Universal published it, but it was, anyway. they all did something wildly unique with the visual direction and the cinematic direction and the storytelling of their productions, whereas Disney and Pixar are sticking to the same thing that they created since like
Toy Story.
Well, yeah, Toy Story I guess was like the inception, but it hasn't been perfected since like Rapunzel, basically.
Yeah, so it was Illumination that did Mario, and that's a great example. Like they built on top of the nostalgia, they made a whole new story. They added characters, actual voiceover actors to these actors, and it still really worked. Like it was awesome. Like I loved that movie, and I think Disney was failing in the animation space for a long time. Steve Jobs sold Pixar to Disney. That they brought that team in. It picked Disney up with the Pixar magic for a while. All of the leadership from Pixar is gone now. They're all retired, or whatever, all the things that happened there. But now we're
elsewhere.
Yes, and now we're back to this situation where they don't have the magic anymore, and that's just what. So like there was every time a Pixar movie was released up until these recent few years, it was number one in the box office. It doesn't matter what it was, and the fact that Elemental just bombed just says like the magic's gone. Like they lost whatever they had. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's because they're staying safe, right? Like they're this billion-dollar titan who has the methodology of if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Well, it's now broke,
right?
And so I think we're going to see them start to emulate these other studios who are getting more popularity.
No, they're just going to buy one of them. That's what they do.
That, yeah. Actually,
yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. I think we're off topic. What was the topic again?
I don't know, but what? It's not even fair. It's like this was like catnip for nerds.
Yeah.
I was like, so what do you think about like this? Did Star Wars butcher the last 3 movies? That's me.
I refuse to watch the last one. I still like that. I love Star Wars, and I have still not seen the final one. I was like, it just didn't do it for me at all.
Well, I think so. The topic, right, was creating these productions that connect with people. And so I feel like this speaks to just a nerddom example of what you can apply to advertising or what you apply to marketing, like
visual storytelling, short form or long. Yeah.
Right. And as I mentioned like early on in the podcast, like I study that side of it to apply it to advertising, right? Because storytelling is storytelling, and people recognize good storytelling and they relate to good characters.
Yep.
And if you don't have those things, it's not going to matter if it's 30 seconds long or 3 hours long.
Yep.
It's not going to work.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, case in point with your work at Raindrop, every time I see that long-haired, lightly bearded, gorgeous man, I watch whatever the fuck he's talking about because it's funny. The guy's amazing. Like the way he delivers everything.
James Schrader is he is a one-of-a-kind human being. I actually hung out with him for hours yesterday, and him and Ross have a lot of physical appearance in similar
sure.
That long hair, that beard. But yeah, James just has a wild warmth to him. He really does.
It comes through in his videos. Like you can tell he'd be fun to sit down with and smoke a bowl or drink a beer and just have a chat.
What's interesting is when people meet him, they go, "You're just like the commercials." He's like, "Yeah, I'm not an actor.
Yeah,
like this is just who I am. Like, I'm not being someone I'm not." Which is interesting. I think people are so used to like actors, playing a character, and it's like he's just him. Like, so like what you see is authentically him. Which is interesting.
The commercials you guys did put his career on the map. I don't know if he works for you guys exclusively or if he's like,
he doesn't work with us exclusively, no. But we've done a lot of work together, and we love writing with him and for him. I mean, he's a magic man.
He is.
Yeah, and I think that authenticity helps a lot. I think it's more valuable than people can articulate, and so it gets overlooked easily.
Yep.
Because there's a subconscious connection that people have when they're not pretending.
Mm-hmm.
And I think good actors can detach themselves from knowing that they are not the person they're pretending. Like Christian Bale knows he's not Bruce Wayne,
Right.
but like he can detach himself from who he is and be this other person for a while.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be a skilled actor if you don't if you don't have to pretend. If you
Right.
can just be your authentic self and glow in front of the camera and kill it.
Yeah, it's in character. Some people they can only play the role that is them. You know what I mean? They, and that's okay. And some of those people are great. Like Ryan
Why don't
Reynolds.
you lean into it? Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds always kind of does the same person, but I loved him as Van Wilder and I love him as Deadpool and every other version. It's great. So I'm sure he's a better actor. I'm sure he can do more. Don't hate me, Ryan Reynolds, if you ever listen to this.
That beautiful man.
Yeah, you just like threw down the gauntlet. He's gonna turn into Jim Carrey before we know it.
I know Jim Carrey, dude. That happened to Jim Carrey. And he just came out of nowhere with like the number 23, and like that wasn't funny at all. And like
Eternal
Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Oh my god, bro. Yeah. So we were sleeping on Jim Carrey. Everybody was. Right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So for sure,
fantastic movies, honestly.
For sure.
But yeah, so unfortunately we are coming up on time. So before we wrap, we do have one last question for you, Jacques. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Maybe that's a mentor, a valuable resource, a favorite client. Just sharing the love a little bit, like we ask every guest.
So this is a unique one, but I'm going to shout out my business partner, Mr. Adam Wagner. Adam Wagner. This guy, he is the yin to my yang. He does not do podcasts. He does not want to be on podcasts. He may listen to this podcast. So if you're listening, Adam, I think earlier you had asked me this question around what are we most proud of in terms of the work we've done. And in the odd way of answering it is like, I'm more proud of who we're becoming and have become as an agency, and getting to work with someone who's become my best friend and shares so many values as I do, it's the best feeling. You feel like you can do anything.
Yeah.
And so I want to shout out Mr. Adam Wagner at the end of this episode. And he'll have lots of opinions, by the way. He's a big sci-fi fan, big nerd fan. We've had the conversations about the Star Wars series. Which, by the way, there's one thing that they did that ruined it. It's just one. I think people have a lot of reasons why. No, it's one. It's what they did to Luke Skywalker's character, making him outcast, making him that was.
They also made him the butt of the joke as well.
I mean, it was.
They didn't honor the character, right? Like
they did not honor the character, and I don't know who made the decision. I don't know how that went down, but I'm like, it was so. It may be the worst decision in cinematic history.
Yeah,
and you can start the episode with that soundbite.
Yeah,
it may be the worst decision in cinematic history.
I love it.
Jeez.
That's fantastic.
Oh, Brody.
I wasn't vibing Kylo Ren at all being the bad guy either. It didn't do it for me at all. Like it just,
you know what? It would have been salvageable if Skywalker had a great.
Sure. But it just kept going off the cliff after that. They're like, hey, here's another spot window. Like, let's make a new Darth Vader. Nope, didn't work.
Nope.
Anyways, but yeah. So hey, I wanted to give a big thank you out to Raphael Dolan Page of Split Base, who connected us as well. We've had such a good time having you on the show here, Jacques. So
you completely butchered his name, by the way. It's Raphael Colin Daigle.
What'd I say?
You said like Dolan Page.
Oh, dude.
Okay, Raphael.
Sorry.
What up?
My brain. My brain totally. I went. What's it called? Where you juxtapose the first letter. Dyslexic.
I just hope that you call me Jacques Spitzer. Or no, Jacques Spitzer. Episode of the podcast.
So we've been talking to Jacques Spitzer, Jacques Spitzer of CEO of Raindrop. You can check out their website at raindrop.agency. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, Jacques, where should they go?
Probably LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there, or Twitter, or X.
Yeah.
Call it Twitter.
We're still calling it Twitter. It's fine.
All right.
Still redirects to Twitter. I feel like that's an okay thing. So he could have done a masking domain name.
Although I have a feeling whoever tries to find me is going to want to argue about some opinion I had on the movie.
That's fine. That's gonna you know what that's gonna do? It's gonna boost your comments.
It totally is.
Through the roof.
Yep.
Oh man.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Jacques, and thanks everyone for showing up. And until next time, we'll see you soon. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.